What's up everyone, I'm CallumOnToast, and in today's video I'm going to be revisiting my signature core, which involves a Dragon Breath user and an Incinerate user in the Great League, using 3 buff Pokemon for this season, with Shelgon on Twister, as well as Armarouge and Ceruledge both on Heatwave. Now, it's probably no secret that Shelgon is way better this season, but you're probably not going to see too much of Armarouge and Ceruledge, and whilst I don't think Heatwave necessarily does much for them, you're essentially just removing Flame Charge for a slightly cheaper and harder hitting move at the cost of not being able to boost up your own attack stat. However, with the likes of Mudslap and Smackdown getting nerfed this season, it feels like these Pokemon have a lot more play, and they don't get hard punished nearly as much as they would have done over the past few seasons. Also, looking at the team, you might expect it to hard lose against Azumarill, but you can surprisingly play around it, and you'll see plenty of wins up against Azu in this video, as of course Azumarill is still everywhere in the Great League. On the other hand, buffed Waterfall Primarina is a complete nightmare for the team, but hopefully it's not going to be too popular this season. Anyways, don't forget to like and hype the video, as I really could do with the sport, especially early in the season when other content creators are spamming 3 or 4 videos every single day and completely oversaturating the YouTube meta. But yeah, now that you've done that, let's get into the question of the day. Which buffed core have you most enjoyed using so far this season? Let me know in the comment section down below, and with that being said, let's get into the battles now. Let's go into the first battle, leading Shelgon into Guzzlord. So a fairly neutral matchup here. They will just barely outpace me if they go and spam Brutal Swings. However, of course, Brutal Swing does not need to be shielded, so I'm going to let the first one go through. Brutal Swing, going to deal decent damage there, and unfortunately in the 2-shield scenario, they will be able to win this, and I don't really want my backline to see this Pokemon, so the opponent is going to fire off the next charge move, and I will definitely shield. I'm expecting the opponent might end up swapping out, and they do. They swap into Azumarill, the Pokemon that you probably were worried about for this team. However, honestly, it's not that bad. Armarouge can actually very nearly 2-shot it with Psyshock alone, and of course with the Incinerate damage, but we grab a shield with the first one. Psyshock number 2 gets them into the yellow health range, and you know what? I think I'm just going to no-shield this. They full send a Hydro Pump, which honestly I was not expecting. However, what that means is I can now get to a Shadow Ball on the CMP tie, winning CMP with Ceruledge, and of course, Shadow Ball will be enough to take out Azumarill. They come back in with the Guzzlord, and I'm going to snipe here with the Twister from my Shelgon. Twister gets the KO. Their final Pokemon is going to be a Ceruledge, and they do get quite a hefty farm down there, but it doesn't really matter. I could have thrown Shadow Ball right now. This probably does KO from this range. However, I might as well opt for a few extra Incinerates, fire off the Shadow Ball, and Shadow Ball will certainly get the knockout from this range up against the Ceruledge, and I'm able to take that game. So, GG to opponent there into the next battle. We're going to see a Shadow Abomasnow in the lead. Now, one thing I love to do with this core is swap out one turn before the opponent throws a charge move, because what that allows me to do is catch the charge move, but also get a full Incinerate in as I make that swap, which is huge for me, because Incinerate pretty much is going to 2-shot the Shadow Abomasnow. Now, unfortunately, we do get hard counted by a Shadow Marowak, but of course, Mudslap's not dealing as much damage this season. It's not quite as threatening into my Shelgon, so I'm going to go for Twister. Twister gonna be shielded by the opponent, and the opponent will fire off. They do have back-to-back charge moves already loaded, so I'm gonna no-shield the first one. The opponent now gonna swap back into a Abomasnow, and I can fully snipe them with the Incinerate. They come back in with the Marowak, and of course, I'm definitely going to shield here. Now, of course, running Heat Wave, I cannot just go straight for a Flame Charge and boost up my attack stat, which could be costly in some battles, but you're gonna see they come in with a Shadow Talonflame, and I don't need an attack boost here. We can just go straight for Shadow Ball. I tried to throw on CMP here, doesn't really matter. Shadow Ball gets the KO, and I'm able to take that game. So, GG to opponent there into the next battle. We're going to see Shelgon into Azumarill. So, Azumarill continuing to cause problems for the team, except actually, it's not that bad. And once again, you're going to see, I'm going to swap out one turn before they throw the charge move, meaning we get the Incinerate in for free. And as well, of course, I'm going to resist the charge moves from Azumarill, unless they're running Hydro Pump, which, of course, we did see Azumarill running Hydro Pump earlier in this video. But either way, we can now get to another Psyshock. And if they no-shield this, honestly, we could possibly go for a full farm down. So the opponent does panic. They have to throw here, but that's fine. We put them into range, but actually, I can come in with Shelgon and Dragon Breath, farm them all the way down. And not only that, we come out with 100 energy. So they come in with a Mana Buzz, which is great to see it here because, of course, Ceruledge, whilst it's going to be decently neutral since they are on Air Slash, it's still better to see it here as we are so loaded on energy. We get to another Twister, and we can fire off yet another Twister before Mana Buzz even throws its first charge move. Twister Twister is going to be shielded. You can see we nearly have another Twister. Shelgon just insanely spammy this season. I'm going to continue to overfarm as they swap into Trevenant. Now I'm full sending Flamethrower. Flamethrower gonna grab the final shield. We can come in with the Ceruledge, and the opponent not throwing on the best timing, and as a result, I can shield once. I can go for a full Incinerate farm down, come out with 80 energy. We can go straight for Heatwave, and Heatwave will be more than enough damage to take out the Mandibuzz, and I'm able to take that game. So, GG's opponent there into next battle. I'm going to see Shelgon into Talonflame. So this is going to be a positive matchup for me. The opponent is choosing to stay in here, and I will be able to outpace firing off the Twister just before they reach a potential Fly or a Brave Bird. At this point, we've grabbed the shield advantage. I'm actually going to no-shield this, and the opponent does full send the Brave Bird. That gets the KO. However, what this does do is set up a very aggressive full Incinerate farm down from my Armarouge. Of course, I'm definitely just going to shield here as they fire off the Fly, but I'm going to come out with 100 energy. And even though they come in with a Mud Boy in the form of Whiscash, you're going to see it's a Shadow Whiscash. They shield the first move, and I'm already at another back-to-back Psyshocks. So Psyshock number 2 cannot be shielded. It does huge damage, and a third Psyshock will be enough to take out the Shadow Whiscash. And at this point, I thought they conceded the match, so I stopped attacking. I was watching a YouTube video at the time, so I didn't notice. I assumed they conceded, and then I realized, oh wait, I'm wasting their time here. So I will now commit to a full Incinerate farm down. They've given up. I think maybe they just want to be credited with the full battle there as the timed research. I think you do need to stay in the battles there, even if you are losing, so maybe that's the case. Either way, GG's to that trainer into next battle. We're going to lead into Medicham. Now, I'm going to try and swap and make the catch once again. Unfortunately, this time around, it does not work for me, but they're going to come in with a Azumarill. So we can go straight for Psyshock here. Psyshock, once again, is going to deal decent damage here. We can go for a second Psyshock, and the opponent will need to throw some energy. Otherwise, I will reach yet another Psyshock. And even then, I can no-shield this. The opponent going to go for Play Rough. Can we get to another move? Unfortunately, just barely not able to do so. So that is not ideal because we haven't really put them into range where we can Dragon Breath farm them down either. So I'm going to come in, bank some energy, and then swap. And once again, swapping out one turn early, getting the Incinerate in for free as we catch the charge move. Now, of course, we get the Incinerate farm down. They're going to come in with Drapion, and this is probably a matchup where maybe having Flame Charge is going to be slightly better for me, boosting up my attack stat, making these Incinerates deal huge damage. But of course, I'm going to shield. The opponent can just settle for an Aqua Tail from that range. I'm just going to throw straight away here because if I go for an extra Incinerate, I will have to double shield in this matchup, which I don't really want to do since Medicham is still very loaded on energy. Now, unfortunately, Twister barely does not get the KO there. The opponent can swap out. I believe they banked at least an Aqua Tail before swapping as well, so not ideal for me, but we can go for another Twister. Twister going to connect once again as all shields are down, and they do just barely outpace me to the next charge attack. Now, at this point, I'm going to bank the Twister. I swap out. I think this is a huge mistake though, because the opponent reaches Dynamic Punch, that gets the KO, and now the opponent can swap out. They can snipe with the Aqua Tail. Aqua Tail is resisted, but it does get the KO, and unfortunately I do lose that game, but very well played by the opponent there. So GG's to that trainer. Into next battle, we're going to see another Guzzlord in the lead. So once again, this is going to be a slightly positive matchup for me in the one shield scenario, assuming they do go for the Brutal Swings. But this opponent is actually going to overfarm and at least farming up to a potential Dragon Claw. They've also farmed up to back-to-back Brutal Swings. So if they do bait with a Brutal Swing, they can now outpace to the next move. But we've seen already, we can actually tank this. So Brutal Swing coming through. Once again, they try to make a catch there. They swap out into Corviknight, and we can just come in with the Armarouge. Now I'm going to shield here in case it is a payback. They bait with an Air Cutter. Not ideal for me, but we can just go for the Heat Wave. And of course, Heat Wave will be enough to get the KO there. They're going to come in with a Shadow Charizard, and I'm going straight for Psyshock. Psyshock should be grabbing the final shell from the opponent, and it does exactly that. Now, if they end up getting a boost with Air Cutter, then we are probably going to be in big trouble. But Air Cutter does not get the boost. We can now come in with a Ceruledge, and I should be able to live even a Blast Burn, but they swap back into Guzzlord. And instantly, I recognize I can probably just barely live a Brutal Swing, so I'm going to bank the Shadow Ball, swap back into Shelgon, snipe with the Twister. Twister is going to get the KO from that range. They come back in with the Shadow Charizard, but we've got that Shadow Ball loaded, and of course, Shadow Ball into Shadow Charizard easily gets the KO, and I'm able to take that game. So, GG's opponent into the next battle, we're going to see Shelgon into Credilli. So this is going to be a fairly neutral matchup here, of course. Rock Tomb did get nerfs slightly this season, dealing a little bit less damage. I don't think it's going to impact Credilli too much, but either way, we're going to go for a Twister. I'm going to wait for them to throw, and then I'm actually going to swap into my Armarouge. Remember, we are running an ABB-style team, so we do have to potentially bait out any really hard answers to my backline. So we're going to swap into Armarouge. We're going for Side Shock as we can outpace. However, they are going to shield, and then, of course, they can go for a Rock Tomb here. Rock Tomb going to debuff my attack stats, so maybe I should have just let the Armarouge go down, but either way, I shield there, we're now debuffed, and let's see what they want to do. They're going to come in with a Shadow Primeape, and that's fine. Even debuff, Psyshock is going to do huge damage in this matchup, so it does grab the final shield. And here, I could have thrown a Psyshock, but I thought they might try and catch it, so I swap out into Shelgon. They actually swap at the same time, I think also trying to catch the charge move there, but that's fine with me. We can now come in with the Ceruledge, and they did get the boost there, but it doesn't really matter. They're not going to reach the payback. We can go straight for Heat Wave. Heat Wave gets the KO, and remember, we've got a charge move loaded. All I need to do is no shield here. They've actually got back-to-back Rage Fists, and they will win CMP up against the Armarouge, but I can safely use my final shield. It's a CMP tie. Side Shock will be coming through, and of course, super effective into Shadow Primeape. This gets the KO, and I'm able to take that game. So, GG's opponent into the next battle. We're going to see Primarina in the lead, and this is a nightmare for me. They're on Waterfall. They're going to be very spammy to the charge moves, although they do just go straight for a Hydro Cannon, so I can actually afford to no-shield this. However, we don't really have any way of damaging them. Of course, we've got Dragon Breath. It's double resisted. Flamethrower single resisted. So what I'm going to do, once again, swap out one turn early, get the Incinerate in for free as the opponent fires off the next Hydro Cannon. However, the opponent then makes a really nice catch themselves, swapping out and catching a double resisted Side Shock onto the very bulky Mandibuzz. Now at this point, they are unfortunately going to outpace me. If this is a foul play, it probably KOs. So I shield, but it's just an aerial ace. Ah, that is really bad for me. I think I've now got no shields remaining. We go for Heat Wave, and Heat Wave doesn't do enough damage to put them into farm down range. So I swap back into Shelgon, and actually it looks like maybe I could have farmed down there, but instead I throw the charge move. They then get the perfect farm down. We don't even reach the Twister. They also outpace me to the next move here, and I haven't even put them into range where Ceruledge can Incinerate farm them down. So they've still got two shields, but they don't need to use them at all. I don't even know what the third Pokemon is. Hydro Cannon gets the KO, and Primarina just way too strong for this team. But luckily, that was the only Primarina I faced. But either way, GG's to that trainer. Into next battle, going to see Shadow Annihilate in the lead. So I am going to once again swap out here, and I did think maybe I've caught an Ice Punch, but I'm going to play it safe anyways. I shield, and it was the Ice Punch there. I definitely should have just no-shielded that, even if they went for Rage Fist. Of course, that was the first one. It wouldn't KO, and they wouldn't be able to farm me down either with low kick. So, yeah, definitely should have just no-shielded there. As, of course, they come in. They're going to hard punish me with a Furret, but I can actually go for two Side Shocks and get the KO there. So they come back in with the Annihilate, and they are going to be very spammy here, but I don't think they're going to reach back-to-back Rage Fist, so I'm going to shield the first one, and now they come in with a Shadow Drapion. So at this point, I can go for Heat Wave. I'm now going to swap back into my Shelgon, and of course, we already have quite a lot of energy. I'm going to overfarm just slightly. Twister gonna be no-shielded, and it does force the opponent to throw their energy. Now, of course, Crunch is going to deal decent damage, but they cannot farm down, so they're forced to throw again. But at this point, I believe both Pokemon are in range where a single Incinerate gets the full farm down. We farm down Annihilate, we farm down the Drapion, and I'm able to take that game. So, GG's opponent into the next battle. We're going to see Shelgon into Shadow Drifblim. So this is definitely where we're going to see it for the team, as of course the backline is going to be weak to the Ghost typing. However, of course, Incinerate is still going to do decent damage, so it's not the worst thing ever if they do end up maintaining the health on their Drifblim. But at this point, I'm going to shield here. I should still be able to outpace them to the next Twister, and even debuff, this is still going to do quite a lot of damage, so if it doesn't quite KO, it will at least force them to throw their energy. So the opponent going to double shield, but they realize I'm still going to get to another charge move before they can farm me down. So they swap out, they catch onto throw. However, unfortunately for throw, I know this Pokemon only has fighting or normal type damage, which means, of course, I'm going to double resist everything. They full send a Focus Blast, which does a lot of damage actually. But I'm just going to bank 100 energy, swap into Armarouge, Body Slam is going to be neutral here up against the Armarouge, as of course I am a Psychic type and not a Ghost type, but either way, it doesn't really matter. I can go for Psyshock. Psyshock gonna deal decent damage, and we've still got back-to-back Shadow Balls on the Ceruledge, so I can just safely no-shield this. I can spam out the Shadow Balls, even if they do swap and make a catch. It doesn't matter. We've got 2 charge moves loaded. First Shadow Ball gets the KO. Second Shadow Ball will be enough damage to take out the Drifblim as well, and Ceruledge coming in clutch here in the end game, taking out both Pokemon, and I'm able to take that game. So, GG's up on there, into next battle, gonna see Walrein in the lead, so not the best matchup for me. Usually I do stay in and I try to catch like an Icicle Spear or something. This time around, I'm actually just gonna swap out straight away, and I come in with the Armarouge. Of course, not the best matchup for me, but I am ahead on energy, and honestly, these Incinerates are gonna add up over time to the point where Psyshock might actually get the KO, so I'm gonna farm up to back-to-back Psyshocks here, and let's see, is this enough damage? The opponent is going to double shield, but we reach another Psyshock. They actually opt not even to throw on CMP, and Psyshock does get the KO. That is huge for me. They come in with Dragonite, but they're on Dragon Tail, meaning I outpace, and of course, Psyshock does big damage. I snipe with the Shelgon, and that is certainly game over here. The opponent gonna fire off the Icicle Spear. This is fine. I can actually just no-shield this, and it doesn't quite KO. We get to a last-second Twister. I don't think this makes a difference because Ceruledge would still be able to reach a charge move anyways, but we come in with the Ceruledge, and all I have to do is shield here. This could be the Earthquake. I'm gonna shield, and they do full send, but of course Incinerate gets the KO, and I'm able to take that game. So, GG's up on there, into the next battle, we can see Jirachi in the lead. So, this is a example where I am going to stay in, swap out, and once again, we get the full Incinerate in as we swap there. And of course, we also catch a resisted charge move. Now, they're going to come in with an Azumarill, which is fine with me. If they try and commit to a full farm down, I'm going to reach back-to-back Psyshocks. So, the opponent actually instead going to throw an Ice Beam. Now, unfortunately, Ice Beam, even resisted, does get the KO from that range, and it puts me in quite an awkward position here because I can't really come in with the Shelgon because I just can't deal enough damage, but also they're a bit too healthy for me to come in with the Ceruledge, so I'm in an awkward position here. I'm not really sure what to do. I go for a Flamethrower, and once again, I do make the catch, but I don't know if this necessarily helps me all that much, as of course, now I'm taking super effective bubble damage. I try and commit to a farm down, and I don't quite get there. I think, honestly, I should have just used one shield and then, of course, go for the farm down there because they're going to have a Cresselia in the back. They were really weak to Ceruledge. If I just had a bit more energy there, could have come out with back-to-back Shadow Balls, grabbed both shields there, and maybe Shelgon had a slither of hope, whereas now, unfortunately, I have to shield a Grass Knot because we're just way too low. They come back in with Jirachi. We can go for Flamethrower, but they end up shielding, so you know what? There's no point shielding here. I just cannot beat them now. The damage is done. Doom Desire gets the KO. And unfortunately, whilst I did make a few nice catches, it kind of backfired there for me, and we do lose that game. But GG's to that trainer into the next battle. And once again, another example. We're going to stay in this matchup here. I'm going to look to try and catch a Gyro Ball. And again, swapping out one turn early. Honestly, like, this is one of the most satisfying things to do in the Go Battle League. And at this point, I'm actually just going to no-shield this. Sacred Sword is resisted, so I can tank this. Not super comfortably there, so maybe I should have just thrown straight away. I don't really know. Either way, it doesn't matter too much. Psyshock gets the KO, and let's see what they want to do. The opponent comes in with a Typhlosion, and somehow I get off the Psyshock. I'm not really sure what happened there. That shouldn't have happened at all because, well, the Incinerate should have KO'd anyways. But we're going to come in. Of course, this is just going to be a Thunder Punch. Thunder Punch is resisted damage. I can now commit to a full Dragon Breath farm down, and their final Pokemon is going to be Greninja. So I don't think, honestly, landing the Psyshock made a huge difference in this matchup, but potentially, maybe I'll let the Shelgon go down and we get stuck with Ceruledge up against Greninja. So maybe it did have a factor in this battle. Either way, doesn't really matter. It's going to be a comfortable win for me because now the opponent, realizing there's nothing they can do, we still had 2 shields, and so they just concede the match. So, GG's up on there, into the next battle, we're going to see Venusaur in the lead. So once again, whilst this is actually a fine matchup for me, I'm actually going to swap out. I try to catch a Sludge, but the opponent doesn't throw straight away. The opponent is still going to throw it. We do resist everything here. Usually I swap into Armarouge, but the reason I swapped into my Ceruledge was because I realized if they went for a Poison type move, I would also resist it being a Ghost type. They come in with Celio, and unfortunately, they can still reach a Surf here. Maybe I should have just gone for a Shadow Ball, realizing that I wouldn't get to 2 moves. Well, actually, it takes the same amount of enough incinerates to get to 2 heat waves as it does to get to 2 shadow balls anyway, so yeah, I should have just gone for shadow ball. But now we can get a very aggressive incinerate farm down. We come out already with back-to-back side shocks, and their final Pokemon is Altaria. So we go for the first one, we grab the first shield, and we can go for a second side shock straight away. Side shock number 2, gonna be no shielded. We swap back into Shelgon, they swap back into Venusaur, but that is fine with me. I realize that, of course, unless they're running like Dragon Pulse or Dazzling Gleam or Moonblast or something like that, then Sludge Bomb probably going to do more damage than a Sky Attack. So at this point, we go for back-to-back Twisters. The first one grabs the final shield. Twister is a great charge move. It barely doesn't KO, but one more Dragon Breath farms down Altaria, and I'm able to take that game. So that's going to be it for today's video. If you did enjoy it, please make sure you leave a like, leave a comment letting me know, and as well, don't forget to respond to the question of the day if you haven't done so already. And if you want to see more content like this in the future, make sure you hit that subscribe button and turn on post notifications. That way you'll be notified whenever I upload a new video. Now, if you want to take your support to the next level, you can become a channel member with perks including early access to new videos, shoutouts at the end of each video, custom loyalty badges, and custom emojis to use in the comments of every video. I want to say a massive thank you to everyone that has become a channel member already. Your support is greatly appreciated. And with that being said, thank you so much for watching today's video, and I hope you have a great rest of your day.